Lindsay Hilson reporting there. Well, earlier I spoke to Tamara Alrifai from the UN's Refugee Agency for Palestine. I began by asking her about what staff in Gaza are telling her about the situation there.
I just spoke to my colleagues about an hour ago. The situation continues to be very dire. If anything, it keeps getting worse. The relentless bombardment and the evacuation notices to the civilians in Gaza are pushing people further towards the south. So everybody, nearly 1.9 million people, that's almost 90% of the population in Gaza, are all crammed in the southern tip of the Gaza Strip, where the infrastructure was ready for 280,000 people. So nearly 1.4 million people in a place that only caters for 250,000.
Particularly critical at this moment when you talk about infrastructure is hospitals and healthcare. And the situation appears to be devastating now around the Al-Aqsa hospital.
The situation of the medical system altogether across the Gaza Strip is disastrous. According to the World Health Organization, 13 of the 36 hospitals are still partially functioning, meaning they can barely do any surgeries. It's really more like primary health centers. The water infrastructure as well, everything having to do with water, sanitation, sewage, cannot cope with that very high density. So my colleagues are reporting sewage water even inside our own shelters at UNRWA. We're the largest UN agency, the largest humanitarian agency in Gaza, and our own shelters are sheltering around 12,000 people in schools where 500 people share one toilet unit. So everything about health and the health services and the public health situation is a disaster.
So what needs to be done right now to try and help?
The most important thing is an immediate humanitarian ceasefire. The second most important thing is an increased access of humanitarian supplies into the Gaza Strip. What's going into Gaza now is just a drop in the bucket. There is no private sector now in Gaza. So if anyone has money and they go into a grocery store, there's nothing to buy. So 2.2 million people rely completely on humanitarian agencies.
You talk endlessly about the need for a humanitarian ceasefire. How close do you get the sense that it might be? It doesn't sound very close.
Our role as a humanitarian agency that advocates for human rights, including the right to life, our role is to continue pushing so that the hostilities stop, people have a respite, humanitarian agencies can work, and hopefully there has to be, at the end, a political solution to that stalemate. We're 92 days into this conflict, 3 months into a war that has displaced most of the population in Gaza. This has to stop.
Despite the fact that every time agencies like yours give us an assessment of the situation, that situation becomes more desperate. Is anyone listening to you?
Well, as long as I can be on Channel 4, as long as you interview me, as long as my colleagues from UNICEF speak about the unthinkable needs of children and pregnant women, my colleagues from the World Health Organization speak about the dire state of the health sector, we all together with the media can push.
And yet huge numbers of people continue to die, including some of your staff. There are reports of pregnant women in labour being killed. When does this end?
This will end when everyone realizes that the losses are all much bigger than any gains that are being obtained. You spoke about pregnant women. They're being killed, but they're also delivering babies in shelters away from hospitals. So that is in itself sometimes a miracle that babies are born, but every time we tell ourselves that these are unsafe deliveries and that in the 21st century, why are women still delivering in shelters under the bombing, away from hospitals?
Tamara Alrifai, thank you for talking to us today.
Thank you so much.